Hai, Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. Um, my name is Dato Professor Dr. Noor Inayah Yaakob, President and Vice Chancellor of Infrastructure, University Kuala Lumpur. I would like to express my warmest thanks to organizer, especially Professor Tan, Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research, Infrastructure University Kuala Lumpur, for giving me this opportunity to be together to talk about something really important in digital transformation. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share my screen. Okay, I'm going to talk a bit different from the rest of the keynote, perhaps because my background is from legal, where I think this special topic on the mental capacity from legal perspective, in order to see to what extent it matters to engineers and also in digital transformation that we are talking about. So bear with me for those who are not coming from legal background, but I believe that whatever I'm going to say here is really matters in the sense that in whatever digital transformation, we must be governed by a certain flexible policy, and also the infrastructure or digital transformation must also look at into the human being, the real life of human being, and what more. This is not based on my pure emotions and personal perspective, but also it is based on the academic literatures, and also based on my background as legal practitioner, where I really believe that this is to be seriously considered in this big platform of changing ideas on mental capacity from legal perspective, and to see whether does it really matter to engineering and digital transformation. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard and we are going to talk about the impact of pandemic since 2020 perhaps, and what are the impact on workforce, and also impact on productivity and profit, and how it also pushing to adapt technology to increase productivity, and the new skill that link with industrial 4.0. And also we are going always talk about lack of talent to support transformation, and talent development is very crucial to support the sustainability of the industry. And of course, because I'm coming from university, we must also see the role of university to support the upskill and reskill. What really matters in the capacity building in order to produce graduates with entrepreneurship skills, and also the academia ecosystem that fit the industry demand. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is also it is also important to look at the some disruptive with values, like what you see on screen here. It is the new treatment for dementia. You see, before this, we treat dementia is something like giving a full medical situation and atmosphere like hospital, but let's think the other way around of something disruptive with values. So I just want to ice breaking to see on the photo that I took from Google, really capture my heart, is the new treatment for dementia. So based on this special photo, I'm going to further discuss on mental health crisis is hitting the engineering sector hardly, and this is very recent, published by October 3rd, 2019, where in five engineers have loss of work, colleague to suicide. A new reports reveals. So this is something to really look at how does the atmosphere, the impact on our social life, and also our way of life, perhaps deal with mental capacity as well as mental health crisis to the sector that dominated by engineers, and also how are we going to look this as a foundation in order to come up with policies, or in order to come up with new dimension of infrastructure, where people is the subject matter who is suffered from some kind of mental capacity. Then I would like to quote the founder and managing director of Equal Engineers, Mark McBride Wright, said, "We need to create a culture where men can be vulnerable and can understand their own diversity story. We do not have this in our male majority industry, and we need to work to bring down the psychological barriers preventing it." So, ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to quote the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. It is very recent in 5th August 2021. It was last year where it stated in a very catchy topic, understanding the mental health of engineers and creating a culture of compassion at work. So this is about something like where the researchers stipulated as a profession, engineering has always been characterized by its rigor, emphasis on productivity, resilience, and hard work. Only in recent years, after seeing the impact of this on engineering students and graduates, have institutions begun to shift their emphasis on mental health. So this is where the collaboration with Pinmaster and the University of Toronto also hosted a virtual panel discussion focused on mental health and mental capacity in engineering, its importance, and the challenges on addressing in workplace settings or institution. So there are few experts discussing on the impact of the culture of being a profession of engineering and how does the digital transformation took place, because sometimes we neglect the subject matter who is really involved in the hard industry like this is actually suffering from something that legal see is really matters to develop a policy or to develop infrastructure or to transform with the digital transformation. So, ladies and gentlemen, because of the COVID-19 pandemic has made them more prevalent and creating vulnerability, I would like also to share that the need for social distancing, where this is really in particular has isolated many seniors from community resources and family support system that can help protect against one notion of unduly influence. So law has some terminology which is termed as undue influence, not an ordinary influence, where when we have so-called undue influence being imposed on us on the other party, there's some legal protection on it. So accordingly, it is important to be aware of situations that might give an individual the opportunity to exert influence and control over a friend or family member, especially when a loved one is sick or isolated. Once a person exerts this notion of undue influence over another person and psychological dependence is established, creating a mental incapacity to make a decision. Then, if I may, stress on the whole ecosystem on mental capacity and the new normal life from legal perspective, where we have several issues where later and eventually gave us some findings where I think the findings might be further researched by science or science-based researchers. For example, we have institutional marriages like husband and wife, okay, and spiritual advisors and followers, fiduciary relationship like board of directors and management, and we also have political leaders and followers, elders and granddaughters, and elders and grandson, and lawyers and client, doctor and patient, for example. These are the categories of relationship where mental capacity might be affected because of the special relationship. So imagine that in so-called the atmosphere of engineering or engineers, yeah, the advisors, the surveyor, the solicitor, and the people, and also the management are actually very vulnerable and very risky to be categorized under the notion of unduly influence. So what happened if it is happening as so? So, ladies and gentlemen, issues on legal aspect that direct to us today is on how we, when we explore mental health or mental law or mental capacity law, and medical and legal ethics in the context of COVID-19. Then, of course, this presented new and urgent challenges to mental health services and legislators around the world. What more in the profession of science-based technologies like engineers? And of course, one area that deserve more attention is the increasing threat of elders, for example, or any partner to those relationship that I've just mentioned that deserve more attention is the increasing threat of elder abuse by those exercising undue influence over isolated seniors during the pandemic. And possible implication is broad and also includes actual and proposed emergency legislation, negative ramifications for the human rights of people with mental illness and impact mental capacity. So these are, ladies and gentlemen, really, really relevant in the atmosphere of engineering and digital transformations. So this is not something that cannot be neglected because it involves something that might tender to the ownership and legal rights and also the legal treatment and also the decision made by person being unduly influenced by the partner or the other party to the relationship. And of course this matters because things like construction, when there's disputes in the atmosphere itself, so law will see whether those parties can be exposed and vulnerable to the doctrine of undue influence. So examples of undue influence includes a family member when pressuring an elderly relative to write on the new will, for example, and a health caregiver threatening to withhold medication with until a power of attorney is signed, and a neighbor emotionally manipulating a senior to gain access to their financial accounts, and conditions that make it more likely that someone will be susceptible to influence. These include things like death of a loved one, cognitive impairment, dependence on others, diminished capacity, fearfulness, illness, isolation, and loneliness. So I give you one great examples on elder abuse, for example, and undue influence. How does it happen in this kind of categories? Occurs when one person influences unduly on another person and to do something that is not their own free will or in the best interest, such as when a caregiver uses their role to exploit the trust and dependency of their victim to financially exploit them. If the victim of undue influence is elderly, it is a form of elder abuse. And same thing happen in other kind of relationship like engineers and surveyor, engineers and management, board of directors in the fiduciary relationship. This matters because this does not entail someone is suffering from mental illness in total who are already covered under the mental act. This is something that the capacity has been impaired by the undue influence relationship of trust and confidence. So the decision to make as a result of that particular undue influence might be disputed. So all literatures confirm and indicate clearly the complexity of the psychiatry and legal issues prompted by COVID-19, ranging from providing mental health care to protection of rights, exercising decision-making capacity to ensuring the provisions of accurate, reliable information to those who need it. So I will skip all the literatures because I was given only 10 to 15 minutes, and please contact me, ladies and gentlemen. You would like to know more about the disputes between engineers and the management and the board, and also the construction advisors, because this is very important in the sense that it might lead to the new kind of cautions when we in as a players of industry would like to do some transformation, regardless of being a traditional kind of transformation or traditional that leads to some digital transformation, because when we deal with something like digital transformation, many things can be override, can be beyond human, and that is where protections from legal rights is really needed and has to be scrutinized. So these are examples of the literatures, very recent, and also among others that I can quote on the proportionality of emergency mental health legislation in Ireland, for example, and it involved professional profession. And this is where ways of to safeguard the undue influence. Number one is to maintain a core group of trusted advisors, such as a financial advisor and elder law attorney for your family member or friend or your entity, and your ecosystem or professional advice when we do construction, for example. Stay in close contact with family members and friends, and also in the special group created by the management, especially those who are elders and isolators and require influence, or those within those category of trust and confidence, regardless whether you are young or whether you are elders. And if someone may be asserting and you influence, documents your concerns so that there is a record established should you need take further steps to rebut any decision taken as a result of undue influence. So with all those as background, that engineers or those scientists happening to be here during our conference, I am also keen to talk about some leadership aspect in post-pandemic. Role of leaders, role of university leaders, roles of entity CEO, and also top management, and roles of board of directors, board of trustees, and many kind of advisors capacity, being either direct or indirect to the board of the entity. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is important to ensure inclusivity as an integral part of the solution to the many challenges in the post-pandemic and ushering the communities through the crisis. So what I can say as educator for the last 28 years, since 2020, because of this COVID-19, was a lost year for many B40 students, says educator. This is as an evidence that being a leader to education. This is also important when we want to project and mapping the digital transformation in this particular field. Okay, because what traits in a leader make their role important in post-pandemic recovery and become the key to post-pandemic leadership. So to me, we should also understand and fully comprehend the two important words of knowledge and wisdom. Well, knowledge is information of which someone is aware. Knowledge is also used to mean the confident understanding of a subject, potentially with the ability to use it for a specific purpose. On the other hand, wisdom is the ability to make correct judgments and decisions. It is an intangible quality gained through our experiences in life. So, back to our first motivational factor that I discussed earlier on is on the situation where those relationship where there is trust and confidence can exert the imposition of undue influence. So as a result, people like in the so-called professionals like engineers, accountants, lawyers also not excluded, because this is something to do with when there is a reposing trust and confidence in delivering something, or in making a judgment on something. Law has say on that. So impact of COVID-19, as we already know, has blurred the division between our work and family life. This is a fact, and shifted what we value, and also fundamentally reshape our relationship with institutions, including healthcare, the government, and employers. So it really, in reality, requires a new approach from leaders. So the fundamental question is that, are we really conscious what is actually happening around us? Do you ever think of how someone benefit others in a large scale? So I can bring one example. This is given by a colleague from University of Cambridge when I had executive training over there on the leaders in higher education, where young man has benefited the large society in India with an innovation to transform. Even though this does not look like digital transformation, but it's something like more towards how can people at large benefit whatever transformation that you are going to take. So happy fridge, the key to bridge food wastage and hunger problem in India by scientist Nas 31st October 2018. And there was one link if anybody interested to know why this particular engineers would like to benefit, would like to bring something beneficial to the whole community with a small kind of innovation in one hand, and in particular would like to waste food and also to eliminate the hunger. So ladies and gentlemen, this is something like really really matters to the transformation of engineering by way of digitalization. So as a lawyer before, and as also as top management of infrastructure university Kuala Lumpur, and also involved in a value-based society initiative, I think, and I really want to be considered as players in this digital transformation from legal perspective, where we must adhere and we must not forget or totally neglect the way of living that we currently live in, where there is one particular notion of unduly influence, and of course that is not something that can be thrown away, because it is something like it helps, or it actually give people, especially in United Kingdom for the last 200 years, rights to reclaim whatever has been lost by way of giving evidence that he or she has been under influence in terms of buying the property, in terms of giving away the property, or in terms of making decision as to the financial status. Whether you are professional, whether you are non-professional, whether you are engineers, and whether you are doctors, lawyers, accountants, you are still subject to the terminology of unduly influence. And this is really matters when you involve in a situation where there is a trust and confidence. So to me, when we talk about engineering field, and when we talk about digital transformation, we must also look at how we live now, and how we can have or give justice to everyone while going through and would like to excel through the digital transformation for the benefit of the whole public. But in reality, just stay tuned in the sense that are we really conscious of what is happening around? Are we suffering from mental capacity in the sense of making decision? Because the more high tech we are, actually we are more vulnerable, uh, and easily fall into the risk and vulnerable to what legal C has to be protected. With that, I end my discussion. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum and have a good day.